Let's talk about strongholds, bases, fortifications, castles in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, at some point, and this is true through all of the editions of Dungeons and Dragons, at some point, as the characters adventure, they face greater challenges in order to earn that experience and earn those experience points. By the very nature of those challenges and the narrative involved, the treasure rewards are greater and greater and greater. And as the players come across treasure or sell magic items, the players, you have a lot of gold. And one of the things we want to keep in mind as a dungeon master is the economy of the party and how that can affect the narrative. If they are so awash in gold that they can buy, research, craft wondrous items, that has the possibility to get a little bit out of control. Likewise, I don't want them to be cash poor because there is an upkeep to your player character, right? +1 sword at level 2, that's pretty good. +1 sword at level 5 and level 6, you're starting to fall behind the DC, you're starting to fall behind the numbers. So players are going to be consistently and constantly upping their gear. Plus, they're going to need gold for consumables, potions, scrolls, wands, staffs with charges, various things like that. And then hirelings, paying for information, paying off the Thieves Guild. There is a gold-based economy. But as we go through that, so they're earning gold, they're spending gold, eventually you come across the opportunity where there's a lot of gold, either with the party or an individual player. This is where you start to think about a stronghold. And we see this in Redbox D&D and AD&D when your character came of name, right? You have the various class names, titles awarded as you move through the game. And I actually really like that idea. I kind of miss that. I like that idea in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, although some of the names are a little bit wacky, but I like that you have a title for your character, and that's how you would be addressed and understood in the campaign realm in whatever capacity that is. So when you reach that name level, your title, you can go and build a castle or a stronghold or a fortification or a wizard's tower or a thieves guild. Think about that from the interesting opportunity for role-playing, because as a DM, I plan out what I'm going to do. Here's the adventure. Here's what we're going to do. It's not a railroad. We can go off script. We can go off the rails, all those ideas. But also, I'm always looking out for the opportunity for adventure hooks or additional role-playing elements. This is why your character on the table is an avatar. That's important. I want you to have that ownership of your character. Play any class. Play whatever you want. So this way it brings that enthusiasm, that passion, your strength to the game. So building a stronghold becomes interesting because now we go off on an interesting direction. A lot of opportunity here. Where are you getting it could be like Kryn and you float around in a castle, but where are you getting the land for this? Is it given by a king or a noble? Well, you got to do something to earn that. And if it is given by a king or a noble, have you made an enemy because some other noble thought they should have been entitled to the land? Or did the king give you a piece of land that you can't turn down? You're going to turn down the king. But let's be honest, it's on the borderlands where there's raids of orcs and goblins, and the king is like, I'll give them this land because they're going to build a stronghold and that'll fortify my border. Or is he giving you some land because he's tired of some nobles fighting and you're between two nobles? So you've got those interesting political ramifications with the land given for your stronghold. And this could even be in a large city if it's an urban environment. Now you got to clear it. Now you got to build on it. Now you got to deal with that. That's going to cost gold. Then the actual construction. Now, this is kind of interesting. I spent a lot of time in D&D Classic. I never made it to the gold box. And I know never say never. There's still a chance. That's still on my D&D list. I never made it to the gold box. But once you hit green and black and you started to now look through those books and build your stronghold, it was a lot of fun to break out the graph paper. It's not just for dungeons, but to break out the graph paper and sketch out your dungeon. Draw it out. Draw out that stronghold. Draw out that castle. And really have it from that perspective. Of course, calculating, and I had a castle for my fighter and I had a tower for my magic user, really constructing that. And then, of course, the cost. Now, while that's happening, there's elements for role play. Look, there's going to be kickbacks. There's going to be people looking for bribes. There's going to be monsters looking to establish themselves. There's going to be rivals trying to sabotage things. You don't just build a castle in the middle of nowhere and not expect some sort of ramifications. So we explore those options. Now, once it's established, there's some interesting role-playing aspects. Once it's established, what I've done in the past is sometimes it will be part of a main adventure that I might just spring on you, kind of like a side quest. Something's happening at your fortification, at your stronghold, at your castle, and you have to deal with it. Or at the very least, after every gaming session or adventure, we'll role play like 10 or 15 minutes upkeep. Here's the things going on. Here's the decisions you have to make. Here's the income that it's generating for you. What do you want to do with that gold? Where do you want it to go? It's an interesting aspect of the game. Now, with that bookkeeping, I try to keep role playing at the forefront. I try to push that as the primary aspect. We don't need to one of my friends who's an accountant, he actually really enjoys that and calculates it out and has macros and everything for his stronghold and his fortification. If you enjoy that, absolutely. But for many of us, I'm not going to hold that down and get into the weeds that much. Let's just keep the game flowing. But there is some accounting and management and taking care of your stronghold. Those aspects of the game now make it as a very, very interesting base and a very, very interesting opportunity, again, for role-playing. You've got some magic items stored there. You've got some wondrous items stored there. Well, the Thieves Guild is interested in that. Or we had one stronghold where an adventuring party looking to make a name for themselves. So the players were 14 and 15th level. They've got their stronghold. An adventuring party of NPCs looking to make a name for themselves, they're 3rd or 4th level. They're not level 20 yet. They haven't retired and opened up a shop. At that low level, they're let's break into the castle. Let's steal some stuff. They don't need it. They're not going to miss it. So while that was happening, they got caught. They did a little bit of damage. The players were summoned to the stronghold, and now they had to negotiate with the NPCs, and they had a lot of choices. Tax them, fine them, throw them in the dungeon, sign them up as guards, as NPCs, send them out on the quest, make them work as hirelings for, a year or two. A lot of interesting role-playing options. So that's something as a DM that I personally embrace, this idea of castles and strongholds. It is a strong part of the game. In Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and Redbox D&D, that was just assumed. At some point, you're going to have a stronghold. You're going to have that fortification. D&D Modern, it's mentioned here and there. I don't think a lot of DMs and players necessarily do that all the time. Maybe it's a little bit of that old school feeling that I have, but a very, very important element of the game and something to consider. Something to consider if you're a player with all that gold or you're a dungeon master looking for some other adventure ideas and opportunities.